Have you ever noticed how silence can be louder than words? How the quiet after you stop replying feels heavier than any argument you never had? How leaving without explanation somehow says everything you were too tired to explain? Because this story isn't about drama or anger or suddenly hating people. This is about what happens when a person reaches a point where disappearing feels safer than staying visible, where being alone finally hurts less than being constantly overlooked, misunderstood, or emotionally drained. There's a moment that doesn't get talked about enough. The moment right before someone cuts everyone off, and it's not impulsive, it's not cold, it's not heartless. It's usually quiet, invisible, and painfully slow. Because long before the silence begins, there were years of trying, years of explaining, years of hoping someone would finally see them, hear them, choose them without being asked. And when that never happens, something inside slowly shuts down, not out of spite, but out of exhaustion. People love to label those who cut everyone off as toxic, avoidant, dramatic, or emotionally unavailable. But psychology tells a very different story. One that starts much earlier than the last unread message or the final unanswered call. A story that often begins in childhood, in environments where love was inconsistent, attention was conditional, and emotional safety was never guaranteed. Because when you grow up learning that connection comes with pain, your nervous system doesn't crave closeness, it craves control. And sometimes the only control that feels available is distance. When someone repeatedly cuts people out of their life, it's rarely because they don't care. It's because they care too deeply for too long without being met halfway. And eventually the brain makes a decision the heart couldn't make on its own. Choosing self-preservation over self-sacrifice. Choosing silence over constantly explaining boundaries that keep getting ignored. Choosing solitude over relationships that feel like emotional debt. From a psychological perspective, this behavior is often rooted in attachment patterns, especially avoidant or fearful avoidant attachment, where the mind associates closeness with eventual disappointment, abandonment, or loss of self. So instead of waiting to be hurt again, the person leaves first, not because they want to hurt others, but because they want to stop hurting themselves. And over time, the nervous system learns that isolation equals safety, predictability, and peace. What most people don't realize is that cutting people off is rarely the first option. It's usually the last after communication failed, after boundaries were crossed, after emotional needs were minimized, and after being told directly or indirectly that their feelings were too much, too sensitive, or not that serious. Because when your inner world keeps getting dismissed, you eventually stop inviting people into it. There's also an important distinction psychology makes between self-sabotage and self-preservation. And from the outside, cutting everyone off can look like sabotage. But from the inside, it often feels like survival. Like finally choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. Like stepping out of relationships where you were physically present but emotionally alone. Because loneliness doesn't come from being by yourself. It comes from being unseen while surrounded by people. Your brain is wired to predict danger based on past experiences. And if your past taught you that closeness leads to disappointment, your nervous system will constantly scan for signs of rejection, abandonment, or emotional neglect. And when it senses those patterns repeating, it triggers a protective response, pulling away, shutting down, disappearing. Not as punishment, but as prevention. This is why people who cut everyone off often feel relief instead of regret. Not because they don't miss people, but because the emotional noise finally stops. The constant overthinking quiets down. The pressure to perform, explain, or prove your worth disappears. And for the first time in a long time, their mind can breathe, even if their heart still aches. And here's the part most people misunderstand. Cutting people off doesn't mean you don't want connection. It means you want real connection. The kind that doesn't require self-abandonment, emotional shrinking, or constant compromise of your boundaries. And when that kind of connection feels unavailable, distance becomes the lesser pain. Psychologists also talk about emotional burnout, a state where giving, caring, and empathizing for too long without reciprocity leads to emotional numbness. And when someone reaches that stage, They don't leave loudly, they fade quietly, because they don't have the energy to fight anymore. They're not trying to make a point. They're trying to protect what little emotional capacity they have left. Another layer to this behavior is the fear of abandonment. Because paradoxically, many people who cut others off do so because they're terrified of being left. So they leave first, controlling the ending instead of waiting for it. Because an ending you choose feels less devastating than one you didn't see coming. And the mind convinces itself that preemptive loss hurts less than unexpected rejection. Over time, isolation can start to feel normal, even comforting, because the brain adapts to whatever keeps it safe. But safety and fulfillment aren't always the same thing. And while cutting people off can create peace, it can also create walls so thick that even healthy connections struggle to get through. Which is why healing isn't about forcing yourself back into relationships, but about learning how to build boundaries instead of burn bridges. Healing looks like understanding that you don't need to disappear to be respected, that you don't need to isolate to protect yourself, that it's possible to choose yourself without cutting everyone out. But that journey takes time, self-awareness, and often unlearning survival strategies that once kept you safe but no longer serve you. So if you're someone who has cut people off and felt relief instead of guilt, you're not broken, you're not cold, and you're not heartless. You're likely someone who learned early on that being alone was safer than being emotionally abandoned, and that realization deserves compassion, not judgment. And if you're watching this and you recognize yourself in these words, know this: you didn't leave because you didn't care. You left because you cared for too long without being cared for in return. And choosing peace over pain is not weakness, it's self-respect, even if it doesn't always look pretty from the outside. If this video made you feel seen, understood, or less alone in your thoughts, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear this today. Because sometimes, the quietest stories are the ones that deserve to be heard the most.